Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Pearson of the Contra Costa County Bar Association Board of Director, and I'm a partner with Key Counsel PC. On behalf of the Contra Costa County Bar Association, I would like to welcome you to the 26th Annual MCLE Spectacular. We are so very, very happy to have you joining us, electing to learn online this year. We have spent many months working very hard to bring you this virtual version of our beloved MCLE Spectacular. We know you may miss being at the Marriott, the bacon for breakfast, the brownies after lunch, and the too hot or the too cold meeting rooms. But we are still bringing you the same great MCLE seminars, keynote speakers, along with law firm marketing forum, a wellness forum, and even section networking rooms. We know you will embrace the adventure of this year's online spec. With this new setup, you may have some questions about how to get around on this site. If you haven't already, please check out the welcome video on the homepage. It will explain all about how to navigate the platform. You made it this far, so you're doing great. Just hang on. But just in case, you will also find helpful information in the FAQ tab on the top of the screen. Tonight, we will begin with a kickoff keynote panel, which will be followed by a law school reception. At the reception, we will spend a moment to honor and say au revoir until we meet them again to JFK University College of Law, and the deans will be available to answer questions. Then you may join their fellow law alums in school-specific breakout rooms to catch up and network. Before we get started, though, I would like to introduce Mark Kaufman, Executive Vice President of Marketing Development of Judicate West. Mark leads the Judicate West San Diego office and a member of the Executive Committee. He has focused on both market and business development since joining Judicate West during the San Diego expansion in January 2003. Mark is one of the company's top case consultants and remains very active in case management of Judicate West, who is sponsoring this program today. So without further ado, Mark.
Thank you very much, Michael. And on behalf of Judicate West, I'd just like to say that we are very proud to be supporting the Contra Costa County Bar Association's MCLE Spectacular. MCLE is something that's very near and dear to Judicate West and something that we've been doing for decades. And I applaud the organization on having such a wonderful program for the past 26 years, which is an amazing feat. And while we'd rather be in person with everybody during these unprecedented times, everybody has had to pivot and change in both their professional and personal lives. And I hope you and your families are all staying healthy and safe as we continue through the 9th month of this global pandemic. Just to give you an update on what's going on at Judicate West, we're currently focusing on virtual mediations. We are doing some live cases if everybody is willing to do so in a socially distanced format with plexiglass and temperatures being taken and all of the proper things that need to be done. We are working with various platforms, predominantly Zoom, although we do have BlueJeans and WebEx as well. We've conducted well over 4,000 virtual mediations since the middle of March when the pandemic hit and everything kind of closed down. Our IT team, our case managers, our staff, our neutrals have all risen to the occasion. I'm so very proud of them all. And everything has been running very smoothly for us in this environment. That said, we miss the in-person interaction. We look forward to when we can get back together and have some of that bacon in the Marriott and see everybody live again. Until then, we will be conducting things as we are. Again, in closing, I just would like to say that I think it's amazing that this program has been going for 26 years. We've been in business for just about 27. In December, it'll be our 27th anniversary. So for you to have an educational program like this that's been going on for so long is just an amazing feat. And I applaud the Contra Costa County Bar Association in achieving this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Judicate West, for your sponsorship of this program and continuing support of the CCCBA and the MCLE Spectacular. Our event and program sponsors are a very important part of the CCCBA community. They make it possible for us to provide events like this. So please support us by supporting them. So let's get started with the Kickoff Keynote event. Elect to learn how the education, care, and feeding of the legal profession is changing. With our distinguished panelists, we are so lucky to have 3 deans of amazing universities, and I'm just so happy that we have this powerful group of panelists. First, we have Dean Susan Freiwald, University of San Francisco School of Law. Dean Lisa Hutton of JFK University College of Law. And Dean Winick of the Monterey College of Law. Our moderator for tonight's program is Kate Mignani. Kate is currently an associate at Edrington, Schirmer, and Murphy. She received her undergraduate degree at the University of California, Berkeley. She is an alumni of JFK University College of Law, where she graduated magna cum laude, first in her class, partially because I was her first law professor at the College of Law, but really because of her own efforts. At this time, I would like to pass the program on to Kate.
Thank you, Michael. And yes, I absolutely credit you for my success. And it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our 3 deans who are serving as our panelists in tonight's program. As Michael said, we have Susan Freiwald, Dean of University of San Francisco School of Law, Lisa Hutton, Dean of the John F. Kennedy University School of Law, and Mitch Winick, Dean of Monterey College of Law. Thank you, Deans, for being here this evening. Let's start out with one of the current hot topics, which is provisional licensure. So if we could start with a brief explanation of what this new provisional licensure program is and who is eligible for it, and maybe touch on where we are now with that program, how it will affect fully licensed attorneys, and what potential supervising attorneys need to know. And Dean Winick, would you mind starting us off on that topic?
I'd be pleased to, Kate. This is an extraordinary time in both legal education and in the licensing of lawyers in California. The California Supreme Court had to grapple with these very challenging issues related to the disruptions caused by COVID-19 and all the ancillary issues that have rolled out from that. And what they decided to do relatively recently with an order that was only on October 22nd was to extend the opportunity for recent graduates. And they defined recent graduates as those who graduated between December 1st, 2019 and December 31st, in that group would be able to apply for a provisional license with the State Bar of California, and by paying a nominal fee and by completing their application for determination of moral character, for those 2 things, with their completion of their legal education, they would be eligible to be granted a provisional supervised license. And they'd be able to practice under that supervised license for a period of 2 years that will run until June 1st, 2022. It's really quite an extraordinary step that you'll have lawyers practicing law in California who've successfully completed law school, but not actually sat for the bar exam. But the court balanced that from the element of public protection by requiring those provisionally licensed lawyers to be supervised by a qualified licensed California attorney.
Thank you, Dean Winick. So I want to let our attendees know that while this presentation was pre-recorded, our panelists are attending live. You may ask questions in the chat bar. So for example, with this provisional licensure that Dean Winick just told us about, if you have any additional questions, you can go ahead and place those questions in the chat bar and our deans can answer those questions in real time. So thank you, Dean Winick, for that overview. And Dean Freiwald, Dean Hutton, do you have anything else to add to that?
I'll just say that one of the differences between the California rule and for provisional licensing and a lot of other states that have entered into this territory is that there's no limit really on what provisional licensed attorneys can do. So it's as long as you meet the criteria that Dean Winick talked about, as well as the supervising attorney, of course, meets the criteria required by the rule. Provisional licensed attorneys can do everything that a fully licensed attorney can do in California.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, and this is just to add to what the prior dean said, is this has been an extraordinary time for the law graduates, an extraordinarily difficult time. And it's been really painful to watch what they've had to go through because, they spent a number of months not knowing when the bar was going to be. Was it going to be September? Was it going to be October? And then when they found out it was going to be October, there were lots of concerns about whether it was really going to happen in the remote format. There were some states that had problems with their remote test, and then exactly how it was going to work took time to figure out. So, and the rules for provisional licensing came out well past the time that it took that they had to register for the bar exam. So I just think it's for people who are out there looking to hire recent graduates, they should recognize how difficult that this has been for the graduates, because I think it was originally intended that this program would be an alternative to sitting for the bar, but because of when the requirements and process was released, most students really just had to take the bar because they didn't know how it was going to work. So, and even now we're still waiting to sort of figure out exactly how the application process is going to work. And so it's just, I have, as hard as COVID has been and the economy has been, all of these directions, and I know the court's had its own challenges, but it's been very difficult.
And Dean Freiwald, you raise a great point, because this is such a dramatic change in how we've traditionally thought of licensing lawyers and qualifying them. I think it's important for everybody to remember that the purpose of the bar exam is to measure the minimum competency for the first year practice of law. That's always been the case. It's the case in every state. So the question is, how do you measure that minimum competency to protect the public from having an unqualified law school graduate out there practicing law? And so we've used the bar exam for that for many decades, but now we're going to use supervising lawyers to do that. I'll raise the interesting question that, given the fact that the court's going to allow this provisional licensing program to go for 2 years, isn't it interesting that at the end of 2 years, these provisional licensees still need to sit for the bar exam, but it will be a bar exam after 2 years of practice that's supposed to measure whether they have the minimum competency for the first year practice of law. So I suspect this is going to be an ongoing conversation for the bench and bar as to how do we integrate all of these changes into the licensure process.
And I think those are important conversations that California should be having about how, we do measure minimum competency. And there's so much more emphasis on the practical application and the practical skills that are needed in legal education to show that. And I think an apprenticeship program such as the provisional licensing program is an excellent step towards viewing minimum competency from that lens.
I think it's ironic that we've taken so much from the English common law, and with every state except Louisiana, as we all know, who follow the English common law, Louisiana following the Napoleonic Code. But we didn't take the British system of articling, which is just what you said, Dean Hutton, which is the idea to finish your legal education and then apprentice under a lawyer or a judge who then designates that you have the skills necessary to practice on your own.
And the success of this program is going to sort of double down on questions about how much this bar is really serving its role, particularly now when, you know, the bar switched to the 2-day format several years ago, which really emphasizes multiple choice, which in turn emphasizes memorization, which has become so much less important as attorneys have access to all of these tools that allow them to look things up quickly. And so there's just a real sense in which the bar has gotten out of touch with the real needs of lawyers today. You know, not to mention what Dean Winick has found in his recent report with a few other people about how the bar has a disproportionate impact on our students of color.
Thank you, Deans. Very interesting conversation and very much a hot topic currently. And your discussion of the bar exam is a nice segue into the next hot topic, which is how would you say that the change in the bar exam cut score and the provisional licensure program further changed legal education?
Well, at the risk of going first and leaving no time for anyone else, as everyone knows, I've been very passionate about this and worked on this topic since 2017 when we started our conversation with the California Supreme Court. But Dean Freiwald mentioned the fact that we have a new empirical study that was recently completed and provided to the court. And what it did is for the first time document with data from the state bar that having an abnormally high cut score in California, which I think all practicing lawyers and judges know, we've been at 1440 for decades when the national median score is 1350 and New York is 1330. We looked at, well, what's the impact of that? And the greatest concern is exactly what Dean Freiwald said. It turns out that type of an abnormally high score has a disproportionate, disparate impact on non-white applicants. And so while at the same time that the law schools and the bar and the courts have worked so hard to increase the diversity of the practicing lawyers in California, it's really had very little effect because the bar exam's been a barrier.
And in terms of how it's affected legal education, I mean, I think, you know, I think you can't help but have to teach to the bar to a larger extent than you would want to. And, you know, we struggle, as I'm sure all schools do, with how do you serve the goals of teaching students to be good lawyers, ethical lawyers, lawyers who have the skills they need to be good practitioners and also pass the bar and make those things not, you know, and make those things meet in a sensible way. And you hope that you can do both at the same time. And sometimes you're ending up, you know, focusing on memorizing arcane rules. And sometimes those rules are actually presented in a rather confusing manner. And you're not serving the goal of teaching the practical skills and reasoning skills and writing skills and all the things that lawyers really need to be good lawyers. So, I mean, some of it overlaps, you know, learning how to present information logically and you know, retain and understand and be critical thinkers. But to the extent it doesn't, it's a little bit of a waste. So I think it's unfortunate. And I think the more that the bar could be really measuring what it takes to be a good lawyer, the better it'd be for legal education.
I really agree with that. And not to speak too much for Dean Winick, but one of the biggest issues that attorneys have with the lowering of the cut score that you see all over social media, of course, is that lessens the quality, right? That the quality of the practitioner is somehow reduced and we're letting people in who shouldn't be let into the legal profession. And Dean Winick, I'd love it if you would share your most recent work that shows that attorney complaints and ethical violations and accusations related to such have in fact not gone down in with respect to the lowering of the cut score. And in fact, jurisdictions with the highest cut score like California have far more accusations of attorney misconduct.
Yeah, Dean Hutton, thank you for that question. So the very legitimate concerns, public protection is the number one issue that the court worries about, that the bar worries about. And that's one of the things the bar exam is supposed to serve as a bulwark for protecting us. But we've never had any data to actually test out the idea, does a high cut score give you greater protection? So we had the opportunity with a grant from Access Lex Institute to do the research for 48 states that publish lawyer discipline statistics collected by the ABA and look at a 6-year window of time to see if there's any statistical relationship over 6 years worth of data, 48 jurisdictions, see is there any statistical relationship between the level of the cut score and incidence of discipline with complaints and or prosecution and or actual discipline actions. And I must say, we were quite surprised to find out that there was there was no relationship, none whatsoever, between cut score and disciplinary statistics. And in fact, as you said, in a number of jurisdictions with very high cut scores, they also had very high incidence of discipline. So I would say, I put that out there not as a complaint, but as a reassurance that when we talk about adjusting the cut score to something closer to the national median of, let's say, 1330 to 1350, we are not doing that at the expense of protecting the public.
Thank you, Dean. It's a very important conversation. So sticking with the topic of the future of legal education, I think we would be remiss if we did not discuss the impact that COVID has had on our legal education and how it will impact the future of legal education. And so if you could address that as well as how law schools are meeting this moment.
I'll start. I think there's been a lot of pros and cons with respect to what COVID has done to the legal profession, it's legal education, I should say. We historically, legal education has been face-to-face, the sage on the stage, the 3-hour lecture with the one exam at the end to gauge student learning. And we all went through it, so that's the way it needs to be done. It's been like that for centuries. And so what I think COVID has really done is it has forced innovation in legal education. It has forced law schools to look at the way in which their pedagogical model works and how it can work effectively remotely. And there's, of course, cons. You lose things as well, but you gain a lot. One of the examples that a student gave me recently that I hadn't considered was that it has equalized the professor and the students. If you look at the way everyone's viewing each other right now, I'm not on a stage in front of a podium. I'm a little screen just like everybody else, right? And that just that alone is something that you hope, and what I'm hearing from my students, has opened up the ability to really engage with faculty in a new and hopefully appropriate way, more as mentors than as whatever the word might be. So that I thought that was an interesting example this student gave.
Yeah. And I would also say, at the beginning of this panel, there was a discussion about how much we'd really rather be in person. But at the same time, there's a lot of adjustments you make online to make it work and to build community and to make to transfer the things that you do in person online. And we've done all of that in the legal education field, created community online in as many ways as we can. Some of the benefits are that when you have events with alums, they show up because they don't have to commute. And so scheduling a meeting with people who are outside the law school is actually incredibly easy, and that's wonderful. But I'll agree with Dean Hutton that it does sort of accelerate this move to figuring out how to be more engaging as a professor, and how to make use of different learning styles, and how to not just sort of be a 3-hour lecturer, but rather use exercises and use breakout rooms and use visual aids and all sorts of things, because it's so easy. We all know, having been on the other side of a Zoom, it's so easy to get bored and disengaged. And so I think professors have really undergone training and hard thinking about, how do I make sure that the students are learning what they need to and are with me when there's this distance we have to overcome.
Yeah, let me speak to the concern that I've heard, and I suspect my colleagues have heard as well, from the lawyers and the judges. Is this education going to be as rigorous? Are they getting a dumbed down version of law school graduates? And that's a legitimate concern, because they need us to do our job to turn out individuals who are just as competent as they've always been. So let me answer that for a moment. I will tell you that from our experience, we have more engagement with the students on a week-to-week basis. We don't know at the end of the semester, we know at the end of the week whether they've done the work they were supposed to do that week. The groups are smaller, the faculty engagement's more rapid and specific. We happen to use weekly exams or weekly questions that allow us to test whether that reading has been done. And so I would actually tell you that there's no question in my mind. Now, I'm an advocate of hybrid education, but there's no question in my mind that the rigor of our academic program is equal to, or I'm willing to say, by the time we're done with this, better than the traditional lecture model, where you really didn't know whether that student that week had read those cases and really understood what the lecture was doing. We know on a weekly basis, every week of the semester.
I'm willing to say it is better, and I can't wait to get the data to prove it.
Yeah.
The amount of weekly, like you're speaking of, Dean Winick, the weekly assessment that is not only allowing the students to apply the doctrine in a real way, whether it's in hypos or as practice MBEs or even in discussions, it's forcing every single one of them to do it. We all have students that come to class and sit at the back, and they're there, but they don't interact that week. That can't happen remotely. Every student has to show up every week and engage and do the assessments. Additionally, there is significant faculty feedback to those students that's individualized to those students in a much more effective way than you can do in a lecture with a room of 30 or 50 students. So I'm willing to say it is better, but I don't have the data yet. Give me a few years.
And it does cap off a transition that we made, and I'm sure the other deans have made, towards more feedback along the way in the semester, instead of the one exam at the end, because it's part of a move towards formative assessment and making sure that students get a message earlier on what they need to fix. And I think with the online, as we've been saying, you really do have the ability to give that feedback, to give and get the feedback from students with the electronic tools. I am looking forward to being together sometimes, because there's nothing like that energy. But I do think that in terms of the change in legal education, if we had the ability to go entirely online sometime in the near future, and of course we have no idea if that will happen, I think we will still definitely use online tools for, as part of the education, because there's so many benefits to it. We're not going to go away from it entirely. Even if we
Great,
could.
thank you.
I was going to say
sorry.
on it, as Dean Hutton said, there is no back row on a Zoom call. Every row, and you're looking right in the eyes of that student, and you know whether there's a deer in the headlights or somebody who actually is tracking what's going on. And our faculty have, many of them with great surprise, because they entered this reluctantly and not out of their choice, But they had great surprise that their engagement has increased. And I'd give one last help to the practicing bench and bar who worry about this. For those whose only experience in Zoom is a passive involvement, not unlike the CLE, where you're listening to people lecture to you and you're trying to stay awake for the hour. That's
Wake up.
That's not what legal education on Zoom is. We would have you, every one of you participants, on the screen. We would be calling on you. We would have written opportunities to send you information we need. It's a highly interactive process. So don't use the passive Zoom model and think, oh, this is what the students must be doing. It's not. It's very, very different.
Also, I want to add to that, the utilization of breakout rooms. Mm-hmm. And we're getting great feedback from our students about breakout rooms, and it's allowing the shy, more timid students to really shine and really come forward because it's smaller and it's safer, frankly. So yeah, I really second that. I also want to say it's not easy. I think I know this is much harder on our faculty, who now don't just prepare for a 3-hour lecture, they are preparing to grade weekly assessments. It's unheard of except in our skills classes, but it's happening in our doctrine classes now. So the work is there's a lot more to do, both for the students as well, of course, for the faculty. So the rigor is there.
Some of them are recording lectures beforehand or modules, and then coming in and discussing those in class and the flipped classroom methods. Which is good to do a mix of those things. So again, there's innovation, but it's a lot of work for everybody. And I really do, as Dean Hutton said, and credit the faculty for meeting the moment. It's a lot of work for everybody.
I can attest to the fact of what you said. I've taught 3 online classes. I figured it would be easier if I'd been there first, so I could look my faculty in the Zoom eye and say, I've been there, I've done that. It works if you do it well, but you're absolutely right. It's considerably more work for faculty, and the quality of the education we're getting is again because of the effort the faculty put in and dedicate to our students, our schools, and ultimately our legal community.
Excellent input from all of you. And I might add that going back to the provisional licensure program and the practical experience, hearings are online now. And if students are getting the Zoom experience and the interaction, they're getting some practical experience along the way. So thank you, Deans. I want us to move us now into, we've been talking about the short-term impact on legal education. Let's now talk about long-term. So what do you see as some of the changes over, say, the last decade, 15 years, leading up to COVID, and what needs to continue to change as referring to legal education specifically?
Well, I in our pre-meeting, I mentioned that I can be the Grinch on this one as we're getting into the holiday season. Let's be realistic. Legal education has been in a free fall for a decade. The number of students coming to law school has been declining for 10 years. And I think it's for several reasons, some of which we've already discussed. Legal education hasn't kept up with the demand for practical skills training. That's what the lawyers and judges say they want. They're not hiring people strictly on the basis of GPAs and bar exam scores. They want people who can practice law when they arrive and not spend a year or two practicing under a senior attorney at a high expense to the client and the law firm. So we need to continue to do a better job of focusing on practical skills training. And we have to be cognizant of the cost. There's just no question that's been a factor. We deregulated the cost of legal education 10 years ago in most states. And so even the public law schools, as well as the private law schools, the pricing is escalated to where it's very difficult for a graduate to honestly say that they can pay off a 10-year, $250,000 or $300,000 debt of just law school, let alone undergraduate, while raising a family or starting their career. So we have, that still needs to be addressed in our law schools.
I think too, and not to tout this online programs, but I will for a second. The state bar issued a report a year and a half ago, and pointed out what they called attorney deserts. And these are whole areas in rural California where there is limited to no legal representation. So one of the things law schools need to do as we move now and into the future is really take a look at how they can meet the needs of students who can't move for law school to our more urban areas. And so, you know, there's a lot of support data-wise that show if a student can stay in the environment that they live in for law school, they're much more likely to practice and serve the community that they live in once they graduate and pass the bar exam. So being able to open up the flexibility of where law school, how students can attend law school, whether it's online or it's hybrid, is something I'm hoping the future of legal education will embrace.
Yeah, I agree with both those comments. I think law schools need to be in constant touch with the legal community in terms of what lawyers need. We need to make sure that we are training our law students to have the skills they need. I mean, as you just said, Kate, you know, we moved to remote teaching, obviously out of necessity because of the pandemic, but teaching students how to do Zoom meetings is helpful to them. But everything else that we do has to be geared towards helping them be the professionals that they want to be. And so that means knowing how to put their own shingles out if that's what they're going to be doing, knowing how to be good trial advocates if that's what they're going to be doing, knowing how to do licensing if that's what they're going to be doing. And I think that to the extent law schools spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on, you know, political theory, and that's not what students are going to be doing when they go out and be lawyers, we're not necessarily doing them a service. I mean, obviously they need to understand the context of the law and the history of the law. They need to be critical citizens. They need to be creative and thinking about how the law can change. But I think that students are going to figure out, and they have figured it out, but they will continue to recognize that getting the skills they need to be good lawyers is what law school's about. And so I think that's going to be even more important going forward.
If I could tie both of those things together, we recently did our Heisler Moot Court, which is a constitutional moot court, normally in a large lecture hall for the community, but by Zoom this year. But Justice Art Gilbert from the appellate court down out of Santa Barbara and Ventura, who's been a justice on our panel for the moot court over many years, in summarizing for the students at the end of the moot court, said essentially the same things both of you said. Number one, as Dean Hutton said, he said the future, I mean, this is someone who's been on the appellate bench, I think 30 years. So this is not a new judge or justice. He said, the future is digital. He said, you're going to need to know how to interact with your clients, with witnesses, with the court online. That's not going back. He said that genie is out of the bottle and we're learning how to work with it. We're seeing that it's more efficient. We're seeing that it has a greater reach, as Dean Hutton said, into broader communities. He said that one of the nice things about this disruption is your law schools are giving you skills that will be the future of the practice of law. And that's not from a law school telling you that. That's a practicing justice who's watched legal access to justice develop over the past 3-4 decades.
Excellent. Before we move on to our next question, I just want to remind our attendees that while this presentation was pre-recorded, all of our panelists are live and you can place your questions in the chat box and they will be able to answer them for you. So our next question has to do with diversity, a very important topic. What are schools doing to support the diversity of enrollment in the law schools and meeting the needs of the local community?
Who wants to start? I'm happy to just to say, first of all, let me segue into what Dean Hutton said before. There's no question that the flexibility of distance education and hybrid programs allows us to reach into underserved communities, not just to provide service, but to find law students, people who do not have the financial resources to pack up, move their family, move their jobs to where the law school happens to be. So I actually believe that this transition to the option, not that some won't still pick residential programs when we reopen, but the option of expanding online education in and of itself is going to have an egalitarian move towards access to legal education. And what we've seen from the other studies that the bar has done, the Access to Justice Commission has done, is that not only are these legal deserts that don't have representation, but we know that when people see lawyers that have a common background and a common heritage, when they see lawyers and judges like them in the system, they inherently feel that the system is more fair and that it's accessible to them. So just in that, I think we're going to open up many, many more doors to both legal education and access to justice.
And diversity of enrollment has always been important at University of San Francisco School of Law, and we currently have over 50% minoritized students, and have had more than that in other years. And there's a lot of things you can do. We have special scholarships for students of color. We have a program, the first year program, we have 2 dedicated faculty who are dedicated to special courses and tutoring and building community with students who come in with need for that because they are either first generation or minoritized and have and would benefit from that kind of attention. We have a lot of programming that is designed to address issues of inclusion at the law school to make sure that our climate is very welcoming and inclusive. We have training for first-year students in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also for faculty and staff in things like microaggressions and again, how to build inclusivity into everything that we do. We have a very thriving racial justice clinic that just launched 2 projects with the district attorney's office in sentencing reduction and innocence work. And I think that's a way that we both serve the community and serve the racial justice program and the anti-Black racism in particular, which could not be more important right now in this country. And so it's building community, it's serving the community, and it's making sure that we build that we show how much we value it as an institution and in the classroom and in our community. But as we spoke about earlier, I think everyone knows that we do not have enough people of color in the law, and that we need to do everything we can to remedy that. And law schools will help with that. It starts earlier than that, but law schools help with that. And there are a lot of ways to serve the community, including graduating ethical lawyers who care about others, clinic work, volunteer work, pro bono work. And so I think it's a bunch of different things that we do.
I have very little to add to what you both said. I think you're spot on. And I'll say that the work of the clinical programs that all of our law schools are doing is so important, and has, in my view, has done an exceptionally good job at being able to switch to remote telelegal help that the community in so many ways sorely needs right now. So I agree.
And I was just similar to what Dean Freiwald said, Monterey College of Law and our other 2 campuses at San Luis Obispo College of Law and Kern County College of Law. We have been, as Dean Hutton mentioned earlier, we focus on our community. We have very diverse communities, and we too have enrollment that tends to runs about 50% minority and has for a number of years. So we've had great success in that type of a focus. And it doesn't happen by accident. You have to have the kind of dedication that Dean Freiwald's school has done to make it happen. You don't just open your doors and hope these things happen. So your school needs to have it as a priority, pursue it. And then again, we have to partner with the local bench and bar. Where do we get our best students? Comes from referrals from the practicing lawyers and judges who see an opportunity to send us someone who would represent that community and encourage it. And working with the other organizations locally, I think that's critical. And of course, I'd be remiss to say, and we need to continue to work with the Supreme Court to adjust the cut score, because that we can get them out of law school, but it doesn't help us if these successful graduates are stacking up at the barrier of an artificial cut score that is too high and has a disparate impact on licensing minority lawyers.
And I think you can say the same thing with the LSAT. Not that you haven't done that work maybe yet, but I'd love it if you did, because I also think a way law school can increase diversity is to have a holistic view at admissions. And while the LSAT is a key indicator of success, it is not the only one, and we need to be aware of its impact on people of color as well.
Excellent.
We see students pass the bar the second or third time, so they can get over the bar. It's just that they have to spend, you know, a year or 6 months, and the money and the emotional hit, you know, getting over the bar, and it's a waste. And that's not time that they're spending learning how to be good lawyers. It's just time that they're spending cramming for this test.
Excellent, thank you. And Dean Freiwald, you mentioned some specific clinics at your school, and so I'd like to ask the other deans maybe about some of the specific clinics, and maybe expand on that a little bit for the attorneys who are watching who did not attend a law school with clinics, like what those clinics actually accomplish within the community.
Well, that's been a huge program for us for many, many years. We have 11 clinics that serve the community, which is quite extraordinary for a school as small as ours. But we can do it because we have adjunct clinical faculty who essentially are, I shouldn't say this, fortunately, this is in a community where my faculty aren't, but it's virtually free. I mean, they're giving us their time and their expertise to supervise law students so that the community members can come for free. And I could never list all 11, but they're the things you would expect. It's small claims and collections and family law and domestic restraining orders, immigration law, employment law, the basics of the type of work that a supervised law student can do. If it's more sophisticated than the basics, we partner with the lawyer referral service from the local bar association. So we end up being a screening process that people can come to us first. If we can't help them at one of the clinics, we then get them into the lawyer referral service so they can get an attorney who can something that's more sophisticated.
Yeah, similar. We do not have 11. That's fantastic. We have, in the past, we've had 3 or 4. We are down to two now, but developing 2 others. Our housing clinic, we have both transactional clinics as well as litigation clinics. And our elder law clinic is primarily transactional, but our housing clinic, which is doing superb work right now, it really acts as a mini law firm right on campus. Students come, they're supervised, as Dean Winick said, by a supervising adjunct or part-time professor or full-time professor. And our students have actually argued at the appellate court level on some landlord-tenant issues of late, but are consistently in court arguing direct line to the San Francisco Tenants Association, Bay Area Legal, a few others. And so while a lot of the clinics will refer out to lawyer referral once litigation becomes imminent, our housing clinic does not. And I think it's such an excellent opportunity for our students to learn how to practice.
Let me add one other thing. As the courts themselves are trying to decide how to use technology to expand, our local court in Monterey has been very open. We've been working in a partnership with them to develop what are essentially online pre-hearings for some of these simple matters, so that a supervised law student in a Zoom setting with a breakout room can actually meet with the client and help advise them, again, really in a pro per advisory role, not as a lawyer. And then we take them into the Zoom court, and the judge is there, and they have a brief hearing. And it's amazing how many of those things could possibly be referred to mediation. So it's sent out to mediation, may save an eventual trial, or certainly allows that individual to go away with a to-do list of what they need to have before they show up for the trial date, so that something could actually be decided. And I actually am hopeful that that is something that will continue on long after COVID. It's a highly efficient use of everybody, the law student, the supervising faculty, the court staff, and there's no question that it provides better service to the community.
Thank you.
And I didn't mention a few of our other clinics, and I just want to agree with the other deans. It's not only, it's a great way to serve the community, it's a great way to address some of the access to justice issues that we were mentioning. It's a great training for the students, obviously. So yeah, we have an immigration, deportation, and defense clinic, which does a tremendous number of cases, because we also have some staff working there as well as our faculty. And then we have a human rights clinic where students go to Geneva to present cases to the UN and also to New York Commission of Women. And then we have the internet and IP justice clinic that works with trademarks, and then also a juvenile defense clinic. So yeah, lots of ways the law schools are providing really useful clinics, which is great.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to spring a surprise question on you related to providing practical experience for law students. If you wouldn't mind giving your input on internships for law students who are in law school, as these attorneys are listening to this presentation, how would you encourage them to use interns in their law firms?
Everybody needs to commit to take at least one. Every single one on this call, take one, right? Take one, feed one.
For sure. And I think there's a difference, right? You can be an intern that's certified to do everything. It's very similar to the provisional licensing, right? You can argue, you can sign under the supervision of the attorney. And then there's internships that are not certified. But I'm with Dean Winick. Everybody needs to have one or two a year, because the learning that goes on for our students in that environment far exceeds anything that happens in the classroom. You're putting context to the curriculum and to the practice of law in a way that you cannot do in any other fashion.
It also, it also really helps the students' motivation and their confidence, and that it builds their skills for when they interview. So it gives them contacts, it gives them skills, it gives them confidence, it gives them something to think about when they're studying for the bar, that they know what it means to be a lawyer. So it's really invaluable to the students. And then, of course, there are some responsibilities for the supervisor to make sure, if the student's getting credit, you have to make sure that they're getting an educational experience, that that you're monitoring their work and making sure they're learning from it. Or you can pay them, in which case you don't have to make sure they're learning, you just have to pay them. But it's not free, but but you can definitely get a real benefit from it.
Let me make one more plug. Again, I know it sounds somewhat like a broken record, but one of the things that all of this transition and reliance on digital resources has continued to enhance is our current students are probably better than any prior generation of students in accessing digital resources. And I don't care how many years you've been out there practicing, whether you have a firm of 200 or 2,000 lawyers or a firm of 2 lawyers, you would be surprised how many times that a student intern can come in and teach an old dog new tricks, because that's what we're doing with them, is we're teaching them the current, both not studying of education, but the access to the legal resources necessary to be an effective lawyer. So it's a win-win from that standpoint as well.
legal technology is a new course, and it's important. Many of our students get jobs partly because they know how to navigate the new world, to your credit, to your point, of legal technology.
Great.
They
Well-
also know social media.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Social media.
I'm sorry, Dean Freiwald, what did you say?
They also know social media in and out. So if you don't have a social media presence and you want one, it'll take them 5 minutes to set it up.
Mhm. Excellent point.
Very good point. Okay, we are just about to the end of our presentation. I would like to give each one of you the opportunity to conclude with some remarks for our attorneys who are watching. And before you do that though, attorneys who are watching, a reminder that the chat bar is available for you to ask questions. Our panelists are attending live, even though you're watching the recorded program. And so with that, Dean Winick, what are your parting words?
Well, I would focus on one specific thing that is an obligation I think we all will take on. With provisional licensing, we need supervising attorneys. And that program will not work without the support of the practicing bench and bar. Yeah, we can write up all the regulations, the state bar can create whatever process they want, the Supreme Court can issue as many orders as they want, but unless we, the practicing bench and bar, will step up as mentors, as Dean Hutton said before, to take on these provisional licensees, work with them so that they are ready to serve our community, the program won't work. So that's what I would leave as the kind of the call to action to all of those who are listening to this program.
Thank you. Dean Freiwald?
Yeah, I'm sorry to be not original, but I would second that. As I said at the beginning, I'm quite concerned about recent graduates. I mean, this is, last year's legal market was very strong, and now we have the pandemic and the associated effects. So you have a large number of graduates and people, who don't have jobs, and they've been working very, very hard, and they have debt, and they have this opportunity. But it's going to take people reaching out and putting in the time and effort to train them, and to give them even if you can't pay them a lot, give them the skills so that when there are other jobs that open up, they have those skills to draw on and the confidence. I think everyone knows how emotionally difficult this period has been. And if you've put, 6 months into studying for an exam and you're just sitting there without work, that's going to be devastating. So even some kind of work for these students, these graduates, to tie them until things recover would be so great for them. So I think, help the next generation of lawyers, and as we've educated them well, and they've been studying and they're ready to work.
I like the heart behind that. Yes. So you have all done your jobs. Now you're handing the baton off to the others. Dean Hutton, close us out.
Thank you for having me follow the two deans before me. Not to sound like a broken record, but I couldn't agree more with the most important takeaway, I hope, for those out there. And also not to be afraid of even remote supervision of our recent graduates. We're watching it happen every single day in our clinics. And it does work, it can be effective. And so until we can get back face to face where you can supervise the way in which we were all supervised when we were in school or when we had recently graduated, I urge you to expand and to open up, think outside the box. It is ethical to do so. It is important to do so right now. So I'll just agree with the others and thank you to the Contra Costa Bar for having this panel.
Yes, thank you.
So, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dean Winick, Dean Freiwald, and Dean Hutton for your time. This was a fantastic conversation about significant issues. And so now I would like to turn it back over to Teresa Hurley, Executive Director of the Contra Costa County Bar Association.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you again, Deans Hutton, Winick, and Freiwald for this very timely and important program about the future of legal education. I have to say, it was really good to hear some positive things coming out of COVID and Zoom. And I loved learning about all of the things that you are doing for our future practitioners and how our members can assist in making the profession stronger. And the CCCBA will be working with them and our students to help create those partnerships. So thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Teresa Hurley, the Executive Director of the Contra Costa County Bar Association. I am so happy that you are here with us to celebrate our 26th annual MCLE Spectacular. We are excited about our new online format because it allows us more flexibility in providing education, networking, and member support. I encourage you to take advantage of the different opportunities available to you over the next 2 days. Immediately following these announcements, you are invited to join a live law school reception where you can ask questions of the law school deans, bid farewell to the JFKU College of Law, and join your fellow law school alums to catch up and network. Below the screen on which you're viewing this session is the link that will take you directly to this live event. But just real quick, I want to let you know the materials and evaluation forms for this program can be downloaded from the session page. Just go to the Files tab above the chat. Attendance certificates will be available soon. If you are a CCCBA member, they will be in your member profile on our website. If you are not a member or you want more information about that, please go to the FAQ tab on the main screen. Tomorrow, we have a fantastic day planned for you with a variety of MCLE programs, section networking opportunities, a law firm marketing forum, and evening entertainment. But now, please click on the link below to join the law school reception. I'll see you there. And we're done. Wow.